Did you know that in 1893, the world looked to Chicago? The World's Fair had opened. It was a magnificent white city, a symbol of innovation, electric light, and the future of mankind. Millions came to witness the magic, but just a few blocks away, in the shadow of that splendor, another building had just opened. It was not a palace of light. It was a labyrinth of darkness. The press of the day would give it a name that would later become legend: the Murder Castle. And this is the dark, horrifying, true story of its owner, Dr. Henry Howard Holmes, otherwise known as H.H. Holmes, America's first serial killer. Holmes was not a raving madman with a knife. He was something far more terrifying. He was handsome, charismatic, wealthy, and a trained surgeon. He was the personification of the American dream, wrapped in pure, calculated malice. He arrived in Chicago a few years before the fair and saw an opportunity. Not an opportunity for wealth, but an opportunity to kill, systematically. He began constructing a massive 3-story hotel, but during its construction, he continuously fired his building crews. Why? So that no one except himself would understand the building's complete, final design. And that design was a nightmare. On the outside, it looked like any other large building, but inside, it was a death trap. The building had over 100 rooms, but not all were for lodging. There were rooms with no windows. There were stairways that led nowhere. There were doors that opened onto solid brick walls. Many rooms were equipped with gas lines, controlled directly from Holmes's own office. He could turn on the gas, lulling his sleeping guests into unconsciousness without making a sound. Many rooms were lined with steel, completely soundproofed, where screams would be forever buried. The second and third floors were a maze of winding corridors, false walls, and secret trapdoors in the floors. When a guest, often a young wealthy woman who had come to Chicago alone for work, rented a room, she had sealed her fate. Holmes, with his physician's charm, would woo them, gain their trust, even propose marriage. He would convince them to sign their assets, their life savings, over to him. And when they were no longer profitable, he would lock them in one of the soundproof vaults, or he would accidentally lead them to a dead-end hallway. And when they turned around, Holmes was gone, and so was the door. Some rooms were airtight asphyxiation chambers. Holmes would sit in his office, listening, until silence took over. And then he would use his most horrific invention, greasy, hidden chutes in the walls. He would drop the victims' bodies through the trapdoors, and they would slide directly down to the basement. If the upper floors were the trap, the basement was hell. Holmes's basement was his personal laboratory. It was fully equipped. There was a dissecting table where he would perform ghastly experiments, or strip the flesh from the bodies. There were huge vats of acid where he could dissolve a body completely. There was a quicklime pit to decompose what was left, and most horrific, a massive industrial-sized kiln, large enough to hold a human body. Investigators later found children's bones and strands of long hair inside it. But Holmes didn't just kill for pleasure. That is what made him so different. Holmes was an entrepreneur of death. He didn't just murder them, he harvested them. After dissecting his victims, he would meticulously clean their skeletons and sell them to medical schools across the country. In those days, procuring human skeletons for research was difficult. Holmes saw a lucrative market. He made money by swindling their fortunes while they were alive and selling their bones when they were dead. The World's Fair ended. The crowds thinned, and Holmes, having killed dozens or perhaps hundreds, grew careless. He left Chicago and attempted an insurance scam with an associate named Benjamin Pitezel. Holmes promised to help Pitezel fake his own death to collect $20,000. But instead of using a different corpse, Holmes murdered Pitezel for real. And then, in a final depraved act, he kidnapped 3 of Pitezel's 5 children, 2 girls and a boy, traveled across America with them before brutally murdering all 3. It was this crime, not the murder castle, that finally got him caught. When the police broke into the murder castle in Chicago, they were horrified. They could not understand what they were seeing. They walked down dead-end hallways, opened doors that led to nowhere, and when they pulled up the basement floorboards, they found a graveyard. Hundreds of human bones, decomposed by lime and acid, scraps of women's clothing, clumps of hair. The castle itself mysteriously burned to the ground shortly after Holmes was arrested, as if destroying itself to hide its secrets. When put on trial, H.H. Holmes was a pathological liar to the very end. First, he claimed innocence. Then he confessed to 27 murders. Then he changed his story, saying he'd only killed 2. And finally, just before his hanging, he gave a chilling confession, claiming over 150 victims, and that he was born with the devil inside him. What was the real number? 27? 100? Or over 200 people who vanished during the World's Fair? We will never know. H.H. Holmes had turned the innovation of the industrial age into a machine for murder. He had built a factory whose only product was death. Today, the site of the murder castle is just a simple post office, but the mystery remains. Of the millions who came to Chicago in 1893 seeking the future, how many found the basement of H.H. Holmes?